Are you prepared? We're the Office of Emergency Services, and we're committed to providing the most up-to-date and accurate information so that you and your family can stay safe during an emergency. Part of being prepared is knowing your hazards and taking proper precautions. Visit mendoready.org. On the Know Your Hazards page, you can find hazards for where you work, where you live, and where your kids go to school. On the Plan and Prepare page, you'll find a plan template. It's important to know what you're going to do, what you're going to take with you, how you're going to communicate, where you're going to go, and how to get there.
One great way to prepare is to pack a go bag. Each member of your family should have their own go bag. Visit our website, mendoready.org, to get a list of items that should be in your go bag.
Gathering and organizing important documents before an emergency is an important part of preparedness. So visit mendoready.org today, where you can find a list of important documents that you should have ready near your go bag in case you have to evacuate.
Not every emergency requires people to evacuate. An emergency kit will have supplies for you to remain self-sufficient for 72 hours. Find a list of supplies for disaster kits on our website, mendoready.org.
A prepared community is a resilient community that will recover faster from disasters. So take some time today, visit our website, get yourself prepared so you can be Mendo ready.
She has made me feel like I'm important and I can go at my own pace, and that's all you need sometimes when you're feeling like you got nobody.
It was helpful to have somebody there kind of holding my hand and guiding me and letting me know this is kind of the normal. It felt like I was becoming a new mom, so it was very interesting and helpful, very, very helpful.
You know, there was that self-conscious part of me, like, will I be accepted even though I'm not perfect?
What I like the most is that she really listens.
The support that she gives me is special because she does it with love, and it's just natural, you know. That's all I could say. It just feels like somebody that I've known since I was little.
You know, I said to Jeanette, Jeanette, you're supposed to be with me for 5 years. Jeanette said, yeah, I know, I'm going to be with you guys for 5 years. That's when I said, well, I guess I can trust her. She's going to be with us for 5 years.
Yo creo que quizás pasó como a la segunda visita o algo así, como que ya nos presentamos formalmente. Y luego ya creo que en la segunda visita estaba como todo más tranquilo.
25 to order. Look to the clerk to do roll call.
Supervisor Klein? Supervisor Mulhern?
Here.
Supervisor Hashak?
Here.
Supervisor Norvell?
Here.
Supervisor Williams?
Here.
And the Director of Transportation, Howard DeShiel, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
All right, we're going to open it up for public expression for items that are not on the agenda. Is there any public comment, expression in the chambers? Seeing none. Any in the Seaside conference room?
Seaside.
Any online?
Seeing none.
All right, we will move on to the regular calendar. Item 3A, discussion and possible action including adoption of resolution authorizing the county auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector to establish and abolish funds and make temporary transfers of money between funds. And I'll look to auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, Shamice Covison.
Good morning, Chair Haschak, members of the board, staff. So we've asked to bring this item forward because from time to time, and particularly this time of year, with the fiscal year end close and the way the funds come in from the state, we may find ourselves in a situation where the cash flow may not meet the needs of county operations. We find ourselves in situations also with timing of particular actions of the board, contracting, and simply handling the transactions between departments where the timing may not be such that the funds have been transferred yet. They are anticipated to come in, but there's a need for the county, the special district, or other entities to use those funds. We don't presently have in place a resolution such as what is proposed today. I will tell you that other counties do have these types of resolutions in place, which simply allow for the temporary transfer of funds to happen in the Treasury, as well as to allow the auditor to continue paying warrants for vendors in those situations. So this is being brought forward today to simply have you be aware of it, to ask for your support in passing this resolution to allow the auditor to continue paying warrants in cases where we may have a temporary cash flow situation, and also allow the auditor to work with departments to try to be more aware of their cash flow needs and their responsibilities with regard to being aware of their cash flow needs, and allow those transactions to take place. There are certain portions of code which allow for this to happen. One of them has to do with maintenance operations, which may particularly apply to certain special districts and departments, and in this case, perhaps the Department of Transportation. So where we find ourselves today, presently, and why this is an urgent request, is that the County Department of Transportation does have has two major bridge construction projects in construction right now this summer, as well as has completed the corrective maintenance project this summer, and is in a cash situation where I'm not presently authorized to continue paying warrants to vendors. And this is largely due to the fact that the County Department of Transportation's fund balance is not sufficient to cover the cash needs for those construction projects. And as I've mentioned in my agenda, but I will reiterate, those bridge construction projects are expected to be 100% reimbursed by Caltrans, but again, they're reimbursement basis, so we have to pay those vendors before we can be reimbursed. They're not advanced construction, they are reimbursement basis. So in order to be able to not stop work on those projects right now and wait for funds to come in that are ready to be billed, we need to be able to have this authorization to continue moving forward. That does mean that the department will have a negative interest because their cash is negative. So there is an impact to their budget in terms of whether they would have had positive cash in order to have positive interest, but this will cause a negative interest situation. As well as, just for your knowledge, it does impact the treasurer's ability to invest funds, obviously, at current yields. So there is some impact to the overall treasury pool by not being able to reinvest those funds immediately. So in this particular situation, there is also the fact that sometimes departments are budgeted funds for the entire year, and those funds will come in over time, but for some reason, those funds may be spent before they're received. And so I'd like departments to be made more aware of their responsibility to managing their cash flow requirements. So in this particular case, the department has spent their corrective maintenance or their RMRA funds before we've received them. In that case, many state allocations don't actually start coming in until September in the fiscal year, which means that we are not receiving those funds yet. And so they may be trickling in, and we may not receive the full allocation until August of next year. So there is a timing issue with that. So what we're asking today is that you approve the resolution so that we can continue to conduct business, that we authorize me to transfer funds as needed in situations where the cash flow appears to be something that will be resolved relatively quickly, and allow me to continue paying warrants so that we don't have to do stop work situations, especially with the construction projects. In addition, let's see what else is on there. I guess that's the primary ask today, is really being able to put this in place so that it's officially recognized and understood that these things do happen, and that the board is aware and authorizes the auditor to continue paying, and the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector combined hat allows me to do the negative interest borrowing, and obviously my office will be keeping track of whose funds are running negative so that those interest allocations are apportioned appropriately. I don't know if you have any questions for myself at this time, or if you'd like to hear from transportation, or how you would like to proceed.
Well, I have a couple questions. So, this money, do we know how much is needed to get us through to pay these warrants?
So, right now I have already stopped paying warrants for the Department of Transportation for the road fund. So we are already holding payments right now. So we do need to be able to issue those payments. We haven't informed the contractors that there's going to be a problem at this point, so we're hoping that we don't reach that, because that will be up to them to determine whether they're going to be able to continue without being able to be paid. I don't think that would probably be very prudent on our part, because we do have a contractual obligation to pay them. So it's anticipated that the road fund cash negative balance may fluctuate between $3 and $6 million it should be resolved by January. And right now I am holding almost $2.5 million in payments.
So is that in addition to the 3 to 6 million?
No. That's going to fluctuate because, for instance, there's a couple of invoices we need to pay that will allow us to fully bill $5 million to Caltrans next week, or this week, I'm sorry. And so we are expecting and hoping that those payments will come in the next 2 to 3 weeks once we send that claim into Caltrans. So it's going to be a rolling, time frame where it may go up and down. So there may be, I don't expect it to be more than $6 million. And there may be a month where we may happen to break even on cash, but because of the construction season right now, obviously they will be constructing those bridges as long as weather permits, probably through October. And so really it's going to be dependent on how quickly those Caltrans reimbursements come back in. The other thing that happens is that the annual county general fund allocation to the department is transferred in October. And it's transferred in October because that's when property tax revenue starts coming in. And so we make that transfer as of October 1st, and that's about $4.5 million. So that will help it come back up, obviously, very quickly. But we don't transfer it early because otherwise that's a cost to the general fund's interest earnings. So that's a transaction I know is coming, right? So I make that transaction in my office, so I know that's going to happen on October 1st. But I don't make it early unless for some reason you directed me to, because that would be an interest cost to the general fund.
So the $6 million you said it's coming from the pool, but specifically, would it come from the general fund reserve account, or?
That depends whether you as a board direct me to specifically pull it from one fund.
So what are the options with that?
If we pass the resolution as proposed, it will come from the general accounts that are under the board's authority in the pool.
So it will just come from the entire pool?
Of the accounts under the board's authority.
Is that your recommendation?
In this particular case, it is, because we anticipate those funds to start coming in on a rolling basis. And I do believe that the October 1st payment will largely resolve that deficit, but we can't, based on the cash flow from the department, determine for sure that that negative cash flow won't occur again. We anticipate it to be resolved by January, based on, they will be done constructing for the construction season. Hopefully they will have received all contractor invoices and submitted them for payment, and we will have been reimbursed by the state for those funds. In addition, we will be slowly receiving the allocations for the corrective maintenance RMRA funds and other HUDA and essentially monthly state, transportation tax revenue that comes in.
And that will go on until August?
Well, that's just, how the funds work in allocation for most of our state appropriations for most programs throughout the county is those fundings come in from, they run from September through August. So that's part of why, this is a different subject, but part of why we can't close the books early on a fiscal year end close is because we're actually receiving money up until the end of August. And so we accrue back the July and August payments to that prior fiscal year. And that's, you know, that's what those funds are, because they've come into the state, right, at a slightly, and then they have to turn around and distribute them back to the counties. So they don't, most departments, and not just transportation, state allocations don't start accruing to the new fiscal year until September.
Okay. So if we borrow from the pool, then are we putting our payments to other entities at risk at all?
As long as it's only Department of Transportation and it's a limited, you know, duration and a limited dollar amount. And so that's why, you know, my conversations with council are that this resolution is not just a blanket, anybody can run as much money as they want to. The department heads are still required to manage their budget and to notify myself and the CEO if they think they're going to have a cash flow problem, and that we need to deal with those on a more specific basis if it's more than just a timing of entries issue. So for instance, you know, there's billings between county departments. There's, you know, things that may happen as we're closing the fiscal year. More cash is technically moving around between departments. So as long as it's not a timing issue, right, of internal transactions or something that I know is imminently coming, we would need to deal with those on a more specific basis.
Okay. Supervisor Norvell.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just trying to understand kind of how this happened. It sounds like these projects got finished way sooner than they were expected. Is that right?
The corrective maintenance project is way sooner than expected. I think that the bridge construction projects with transportation, you don't always know exactly when you're going to meet all of the requirements to start construction and a contractor is going to be ready to go. And so I believe it's likely, and you can confirm that with the department, that we just have a unfortunate, you know, convergence of all these things happened at once. We don't normally have two major bridge construction projects happening in the same construction season, and the department did do their 25-26 allocation of corrective maintenance RMRA projects early. And so Howard won't like it, but it will be my recommendation that he not do one next summer, that amount of money has already been spent. Typically, in the past, the department has been fortunate to have enough money in their fund balance to be able to carry through. And that fund balance may be leftover RMRA money they haven't spent yet, or it may be money that the board has allocated as match for specific projects. Very rarely is it just unallocated, unreserved funds in their fund balance. So in the past, they may have had advanced payment FEMA payments for storm damage, or they may have had advanced RMRA funds they hadn't spent yet on a corrective maintenance project, or they may have had board allocated match, for instance, for a major bridge project that did require match, or a local road project. And so they may have had enough money in their fund balance to carry them through that construction season. But as they've done those projects and used those funds, they don't have that cushion in their fund balance. And so that's why it's important sometimes for them to have money in their fund balance in order to ride this through. So in the past, they may have had $6, $7, $8 million in their fund balance, while mostly allocated for something that hasn't happened yet. Now their fund balance is starting to go down. So we expect that their fund balance after the budgeted for 25-26, their ending fund balance for 25-26 will be $3.5 million roughly. That's not going to be a lot to get them through a normal construction season. And so this may happen again in the future.
Since you've been here, has this happened before?
It's rarely happened. It's been more of a timing issue with, for instance, the annual allocation from the general fund. I do know that it has happened, but it's been a brief time period and less money.
And your idea of perhaps preventing this in the future is to have the department heads be more accountable or more aware of their cash flow? Is that what
I
you're
would
suggesting?
hope. That's,
yeah.
I mean, that's one of the goals. I also hope that the special districts will become more aware, because we could end up in a similar situation for some of the special districts. For instance, the process that's currently in place to handle the fire agency funding for the allocations of the Prop 172, the Measure P, and the TOT camp is taking a very long time. So that process is waiting for my office to say what the total amount received was. That allocation is coming to the board, and then it's going through contracting. And it's going through contracting every quarter. That's 88 contracts. And so that's causing issues for some of the special districts, because they have anticipated that that money's coming, but it's taking a long time. And so those special districts are on a very close to, and some of them are kind of hitting that line. And the issue is that I do know that money's coming, right? I know the board has already made that commitment, made the allocation, even approved the percentage of distribution, but we're waiting for contracts to get through contracting. So in those cases, I need to be able to just say, I understand you have another $25,000, $40,000, $50,000. We're just waiting for the process to happen. And that's not, in some cases, it's not at any fault of the district.
Okay, so to prevent this from happening again, or maybe on not such short notice, is one of the options to keep everybody aware, including this board and the public, to do monthly cash flow reports?
We could, but my hesitation is only that because there usually are so many transactions moving back and forth, even between county departments, and like I said, the allocation from the state is a month to 2 months behind. So we could have those discussions, but a lot of that would take effort from every department to explain the various reasons for why that's not truly a negative. So it may look like a negative cash today, but it may be that within 2 weeks, when we've done all the transactions back and forth, it's not actually negative anymore at that date, because effective date has to do with accounting periods, right? And so we're not accrual, we are cash basis, except for when we close the books. And so when we close the books at the end of the fiscal year, there's still a lot of movement of money going around. I don't know if it makes sense to do it monthly. I think that obviously my department will be paying closer attention. I'm not sure why that wasn't a process in place as much for either the treasurer or the auditor's office, but we will be having a much more close eye on how departments are handling their cash flow. And those fortunately or unfortunately do result in a lot more conversations that I and staff have to have with departments to make sure that they're submitting their claims to the state. And what is the situation, and when do we expect that money?
Is the monthly report something that you think is feasible, or at least willing to have that discussion on whether it's monthly or bi-monthly?
I'm open to the discussion. I'm just not sure how much time that is going to take from my office and staff to do that monthly.
Thank you.
Supervisor Klein.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Cubison. First want to just appreciate that the resolution before us today is tailored towards the specific funds that are needed at this point, and not having a blanket resolution at this point in time. I would be really concerned about that, kind of opening the door for this to happen in other areas where it doesn't necessarily need to happen. At least we would hope not. My question is, how did you become aware of this? Were you notified by Department of Transportation, or did you see this in your normal process?
Thank you for the question. I did have a conversation, I think it was about 2 months ago, about my concern with the level of cash in the department's fund. And again, we weren't at the end of the fiscal year yet, but I did have a conversation with fiscal staff saying it's getting low. I am concerned. And so they did bring their billings to Caltrans more current. They did get more funds in. The balance did look better. And I was alerted by fiscal staff that there was concern that we were going to have a cash flow issue because of the timing of the corrective maintenance project, and the fact that it did include the next year's allocation of funds. It's not unusual for the department to, issue their corrective maintenance project contract for this summer, but unfortunately what was issued was the balance of the 23-24 that hadn't been spent yet, all of the 24-25, as well as the 25-26. So in my opinion, it should have only included the prior year's balance and the 24-25 amount and not included the 25-26. I'm not quite sure how that amount got included. I don't know if it was for scale. Sometimes it's, you get more, if you can do more, you get more, economies of scale from that particular contractor. I don't really know. But, and I'm sure you can address that question to the department if you'd like. My concern is that I really think that it should have been that we didn't do the 25-26. It would have been different if we did the 25-26 for next spring, summer, even if we hadn't fully received all of it, but we'd received most of it, because then I think the fund balance could have carried likely that difference.
Thank you.
Hey, Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, question for County Council. I apologize for not asking. This discussion prompted it. Should we have an explicit clause for the window when these transfers can be made? July 1 to the last Monday in April to align with California Constitution.
Charlotte Scott County Council, through the chair. Yes, we have that language in the resolution. You'll see after now therefore, it's included, and that is the intent of the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector as provided in the Constitution.
Got it, I see it now. Disregard.
All right, so maybe this might be directed to Department Head DeShiel. It's about the Mountain View Road project, and my understanding is that that's part of the corrective maintenance project contract that we're dealing with.
Well, that was last summer.
Okay, and so we're still paying that off, or we're waiting for reimbursement for that?
No. So I should be formal. Good morning, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm Howard DeShield, your Director of Transportation. I haven't asked for this big a loan since 1988 when I bought my first house here in Ukiah for $78,000, and the loan ended up being $130,000. But, $6 million, that's a lot. So yes, to go on, the Mountain View Road was last summer. This summer was Hopland area. And I will admit, we made a mistake in that I like to go to bid on everything in the late winter, spring, because most contractors that start bidding their work and scheduling their summer, they tend to, if you're early in the process, you get a better price. What really caught us off guard, and it was our mistake, is that most of the contractors schedule us for later in the year. And we can stipulate in the contract that they build later in the year. In fact, next summer, if the board allows us to do the corrective maintenance project, which I will advocate for, we're going to be on the coast, and we typically look at September, done by early October, because the weather for chip seal tends to be better on the coast in those months. The coast, sometimes in June, the fog can be so heavy, the roads are wet, So I think that was our major mistake this year. The contractor wanted to start in Hopland in May. That just never happens. And they're all done now. We paid all the money out. We also, because the Ackerman Creek Bridge project got delayed, it was supposed to be over 2 seasons. The contractor wanted to take an intense 1-season approach. And so we didn't do half that bridge last year. And then, of course, we have the Lambert Lane Bridge in Boonville. So we end up with these major projects. Not making excuses, should have probably seen that coming and done something about it. But, one thing this is exposed, and, it's something I got to thinking about, is, first bridge I worked on was Robertson Creek in 2005 when I got this job, and it was a little over $1 million. highest priority bridge after that was on County Road 110, a little over $1 million. Bridges, even our small bridges now, are going 3, 4, 5 million. Ackerman Creek will be our most expensive bridge to date at 15 million, but guess what? Philo Greenwood is going to dwarf that in 28, 29 when we do it. Then, look at this Redemeyer Road extension project. Also, looking at 28, 29, 40 million. Now, with federal allocations, with basically, as the auditor controller explained, a ability to build during construction, but a delay in the time you have to seek reimbursement and you get your money. So it was a unfortunate thing, stake on the department's part, but we've got to continue to build. And if that means in the future establishing some kind of more dedicated line of credit for us to do that, we're not doing small, a lot of what the department gets through the years that I've been the department head are a storm damage project for $100,000. We were able to float those through with reimbursements for one coming in, the other. But this probably exposes a weakness we got, particularly if we get these mega projects like Redemeyer and Brook Trail Second Access. We're going to have some other kind of funding stream along with that. So yeah, kind of a unique situation. I'll take any questions you've got. And like I said, I managed to get my house loan back in '88, so I hope you guys approve this loan today. It'll be my biggest loan ever, $8 million.
Well, looking into the future, this line of credit idea seems like, is that a possibility? And maybe that's a question for the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector. But would that be an option so we don't have to borrow from the general fund or the pool?
Sure. Auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, Shamise Kebison. So yes, there are some other counties that do have, and I don't know how many, but I did speak to one other county that does have a line of credit revolving financing for their transportation projects. And having that in place does allow them to bill those transportation projects the interest. That can be billed into the transportation budget for those particular projects. That's something that, this board in the past, not necessarily these configuration of members, has tried really hard to limit the amount of additional debt that the county has. So that is something to consider, and obviously will need to take place for the major projects, unless for some reason the department's able to do advanced construction, which is not particularly appealing, I don't think, to Mr. DeShiel. But that is a possibility. I'm not quite sure how much, and that is something that I think the department, and I suppose myself, will have to explore when we do look at the mega projects as he's describing, because we've never had to do them something of that magnitude. So I think it's one thing when we're talking about, $4 or $5 million. It's something else when we're talking $30 or $40 million.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess the good news is that the projects were done or being done in a timely way, and we're moving forward with getting those projects, completed. I mean, so we're in this difficult position with
we are,
and when we look at the future, for these mega projects, that we are going to have some kind of line of credit, it seems.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just want to make one more point. Director DeShiel, I respect him totally. I've worked for him for 9 years before coming to the Auditor Controller's office. But we do have a little bit of a difference of opinion on the fact that my real concern also is the situation is because the money for the 25-26 corrective maintenance project was spent before any money was started to be received for the 25-26 year. So that's why my statement is that he will come. We will have the debate in the future, in the spring, about whether he will be able to do a project next spring and summer. Unfortunately, my professional opinion is going to be that he does not have the ability, because by next summer, he still will not have received any of the 26-27 revenue. That will only start to come in September of next year, which is pretty close to when he would start construction. But again, that would just be the beginning of revenue for 26-27, but that can be a discussion for that time.
Right, understood. Yeah.
Supervisor
And-
Williams
yes.
appears to.
Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, it's a different question. You ready for it, or?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so this is for council again. I agree that there's a whereas that's recognizing the window, but shouldn't that also be
Supervisor
included?
Williams, can you speak into the microphone, please? It's a little garbled.
How is this?
Better.
Okay. For a question for council, I see where there's a whereas recognizing the window when revenue flows, but in the resolve section, I don't see a restriction on transfers out within the appropriate window.
I think that the language that states temporary transfer shall not exceed the percentage of anticipated revenues occurring to the current fiscal year, and then the following sentence accounts for this issue. If the board would like to add that additional specific language as to the July 1st through last Monday in April 2026, we can add that. But I do think it is the current language accounts for this.
If a transfer were to happen after that last Monday in April, reading this, it's plain read, it seems the board has authorized it. I don't see a restriction.
County Council, through the chair, if I may, I think the auditor, this is authorizing the auditor, if you would like to add that additional restriction, you can. I think it is still addressed in the language of the resolution, but we can add that if necessary.
Oh, Supervisor Mulherin.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this item forward, and I understand where we are in the process. My concern is about moving forward, what our challenges are going to be as we manage balancing as federal funds may not come in as timely as they previously have, or state funds may also be delayed. And I appreciate the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector coming today, and if there are things that the board needs to do to support you in making sure that department heads understand their cash flows better, I would be happy to hear those recommendations so that we don't get into a situation like this in the future. And you mentioned, it's not on the agenda, but about the fire service contracts, would be happy to have that conversation in the future as well. I had a question for Director DeShiel about the future of the 20-year corrective action plan. This is a document that was approved and developed before I was on the board, or before two other supervisors were on the board. And certainly the prices that were allocated for those particular roads have changed. For instance, Hopland was at 4.4 million back in 2019, and we just spent 6 or 7 something on those projects. Our 26-27 project is 25.6 miles, so it's a pretty big project compared to the 9 miles that we just did in Hopland. Director DeShiel, do you want to go back and look at the corrective action 20-year plan and adjust it based on the inflation and our fiscal challenges?
So that may need to happen. I will say for next summer's corrective maintenance plan, it can mostly be done by chip seal, that pavement preservation. This year in Hopland, it was reconstruction. It was in place recycle. And my hope was, and again, I started putting that plan together in 2016 when SB1 passed. The board didn't see it till 2019. And the funding was supposed to increase. You know, there was an inflation rider in our MRA. So the hope was that, you know, even though I was working in, let's say, 2018, $19 when I wrote it, because it was January of 19 when it came to the board, that the money would increase and cover the inflation. Well, you're right. That really hasn't happened. Again, inflation has probably outpaced, you know, construction costs. But I still say it would be possible to meet the, and I know Chamisa will differ on this, but in next spring you will see me come in here with our cash and with a late start and try to do something. Because I think it's really important to me to do a little bit every year from a, operational standpoint. In every action we ask you to take on corrective maintenance, you authorize the road crews to do the maximum they're allowed by law. And it gives the road crew also the preparation of the area, because they do a lot that needs to be done. And I just would like to see that a little bit every year. And then as far as whether we have to reduce the amount we do if the money's not there, that is bound to happen. The older that plan gets, you're right, it could need a major revision at some point. Unfortunately, it'll be a revision down. We'll do less miles, and that'll throw more miles into the, what Supervisor Jurdy liked to call the roads never to be paved list. But for right now, I think I can maintain it for next year with chip seal and with the county crews. I think it is possible. But we'll look at cash flow in the spring. We'll see. Sure. Deputy Director Jamise Covison wants to speak. Alicia Meyer. I'm old. I can't remember who's.
Alicia Winokur. I just wanted to say that although you're correct in the estimates from 19 for the Hopland year was 4.4 million, when we go through and we look at the roads that are in that 20-year plan and we build our engineer's estimate for that project, we are also looking at the actual RMRA estimates that are coming through as the current year's estimate. And so the amount of work that we can do is based on the actual estimate, right? So the 4.4 million was the best estimate back in 2019, but the current estimate for 26-27 is, I think, around 5.4 or 5.5 million, 5.4, which is about what the Hopland project construction contract was.
In other words, in 2016, the projections that actually came from CSAC, that inflation rider in SB1 has taken up. So they're talking about the actual, revenues. They've grown from when I did the plan. Probably not enough, but they have grown. Right.
Okay, I just want to be clear that I do have another question, but I just want to make sure I'm clearly, even though the costs went up for the Hopland project, we did the same amount of miles that were in the plan from 2019, yes. And that would be our goal or a plan for 26-27.
That's my goal. The main reason for that is to delay a year. It's just going to cost more the following year. And if all I need to do is secure some kind of a loan again from you folks, even if it's some kind of other external loan, unless the interest gets to be exorbitant, I'm just, I'm here to, at least for a couple more years till I retire, to build roads and bridges. That's what I want to do. And I jumped through most of these bridge projects take 7 years to get through. The environmental processes, the costs, millions of dollars, and then you finally get a federal allocation and you just need to build. And to wait because of a cash flow, I just think in the end, the small amount of interest is insignificant. But I'm not a money guy. I'm a want to build things guy. So you all will listen to your financial and legal folks, and I'll advocate for infrastructure, and we'll see how we do. Any other questions?
I did have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Earlier in the year, the board heard that MCOG was doing a study related to a county road tax. Do we know when we're going to hear back about that?
Well, I don't know who your reps are on MCOG right now. They're okay. So I'm sure they'll report out. But right now, there is a contract let. There is a consultant that's developed a push-pull. And I think there'll be results from that poll, and I'm sure either I can report back or your representatives in MCOG can report back when we have results on that.
Yeah. And just to answer that, we have an MCOG meeting this afternoon, and that will be a question to see what the update is. And you'll hear back. Okay, Supervisor Williams.
Supervisor Williams speaking into the mic. Our resolution has insufficient time such that they have no negative effect. The language in the Constitution seems like it's more strict than that. Such transfers shall be repaid from the first monies therefore received by the political subdivision before any other obligation of political subdivision is met from such monies.
County Council, through the chair, if I may, I actually, while we were, Director DeShiel was speaking, I drafted some proposed revision to that sentence, and if the board wishes, it could be all such transfers shall be done not prior to July 1st, 2025, nor after the last Monday in April of 2026, and shall be done in such a way and at such a time as they will not have negatively affect the funds from which they're drawn, etc. So if that revision would please the board, we can make that change right now.
So, follow-up question for council. I can support that, but it seems like the language in the state constitution is more strict than what you're stating, because it requires that the first monies received go towards resolving the transfer. Our language seems to give some discretion as long as it's not a negative impact, wouldn't necessarily need to be first money supplied. Should we align our language with the language in Article 16?
County Council.
County Council, through the chair. So this resolution does deal with two different situations. And yes, we could add that language as well. But I know that the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector is requiring sufficient information from the districts, and if it were a situation of an outside district requesting an advance of some kind under the California Constitution, the internal intra-fund transactions or transfers that the auditor has described, such as with Department of Transportation, that is the internal county funds, and there isn't the same restriction. However, I understand the auditor is also expecting that same result from any such transfer, that the county the county funds be repaid before the funds are used for any other obligation. But if you would like to add that language, we can as well.
May I?
Yes.
Auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, Shamice Kevison. So there's a couple of authorizations within the resolution that's not strictly limited to that section in the Constitution. So in the case of the Department of Transportation, this needs to be kind of a revolving, right? It needs to be coming in and out, because in order for me to continue to pay vendors, I can't stop where I'm at right now and any new money only go to repay that. It's kind of a effective date kind of cycling through the process. So, some of these transactions that may cause part of this negative may cross periods, and they may also have to do with different authorizations. So there are some cases where there's a very formal agreement we have done in the past on a very specific individual basis with one of the special districts that had a continual cash flow need. There was an actual resolution to the board with a repayment schedule, and we did take those funds directly out of their property tax allocations. And it may be that this resolution allows me to have that conversation with the district and bring that to you again in an individual basis for that type of scenario. But what we're talking about right now is kind of a dual issue. We do have sometimes, as I mentioned, a brief timing situation where we're not talking about really holding a negative for a long period of time and dealing with the 85% of their allocation for the entire year. We're talking about it may literally be 2 weeks and it may be 30 days. And what we're really just talking about specifically is there's a county process in place where the county hasn't done their side of it, and the effective date of those transactions is still going to go back and resolve that cash flow issue, or that there is a pending payment from the state that's already been approved and we haven't received it yet. So it's not a clear only one situation scenario with this resolution. Unfortunately, I don't think that's feasible for us to do a resolution every time, or I would be before you on a much more frequent basis asking for a special meeting. So part of this resolution on one of the actual items does allow me to look at the funds under the board's control in a more global amount so that I don't have to stop payments every other week or every week on a particular department. So there's more than just the constitutional reference in that resolution.
Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, one final question. I imagine the public will be asking us, so I'd like to have a clear answer. How will we calculate the 85% when the time comes to do the transfer? Will the Auditor Controller's Office certify the anticipated accruals and of cash availability and publish that at the time of transfer so that we can indicate we're staying with below the 85%?
Well, it's going to be based on what's budgeted and what the feedback is from the department. I mean,
but it's I think it's the 85% is not on the expenditure side. It's on the anticipated revenue. So it's the accrual and cash on hand. Isn't it the total assets anticipated that we're measuring?
It's the total revenue.
Total revenue. So at the top, before that transfer happens, will we in some way certify what we believe that total is to indicate we're staying within the 85%?
I think that's going to probably be on a case by case if it's going to be a long-term situation. We're not, in the majority of these situations are not going to be of the magnitude that we're talking about with the Department of Transportation. I am not going to be comfortable allowing any department to run negative to that extent. That is not what is intended by this resolution. The resolution is intended to allow me to continue to pay vendors when I can see, based on the timing of transactions that come in or the allocations we know from the state, or that we have an internal process that is, they're going to get their, October 1st payment, or that we know is $4.5 million. So unfortunately, this is kind of an operational, as if it's a significant amount, as we put in the resolution, we are requiring that the department head notify the CEO and myself, and we may have to do that on a case-by-case basis.
So I'm sure no one in our organization is anticipating transferring up to 85%. I'm not worried. Practically, I think we're all on board here. But since we're setting policy and we're establishing this 85% as the maximum transfer amount, shouldn't we be clear on how we would calculate that? Even if it's 5% or 1%, I think each time we should be clear, here's what we anticipate, and therefore we're staying within our policy. And I'm not following how the public or the board could have that justification on hand when the question is raised. How do other counties handle it? Maybe this is for county council. What's the appropriate means for the board and the auditor controller to show the work that we're staying with below the 85%?
Charlotte Scott, County Council. So again, just to clarify, there are two different situations here. The California Constitution provision that has the language about the 85%, that is directed towards the external entities from the county and their 85% of their revenue, their funds. And I know that we don't have that situation in front of us today, but that would be when that situation arises. I imagine the auditor controller, as also is in the Constitution, requires of that special district a resolution from the governing body of that district that dictates they are seeking such a transfer, and that they lay out in their resolution the limitations according to the California Constitution, and then the auditor controller will receive and require whatever backup documentation she needs, And I think that is how most counties do it, and it would be a policy of the auditor controller. The intra-fund county transfers, the government code 25252 does not contain the same restrictions. It is simply delegates, the board delegates its authority over its funds, not the special district funds, over its funds to the auditor controller to make those temporary transfers for these very case-by-case, smaller, short-term transfers. And I don't think the same language is necessary. I think the auditor has that authority. But I think if the board wants to request that the auditor have additional policies, and I'm sure she would consider that, but I think they're two separate situations, and I do think other counties handle it in that way.
Assistant CEO.
If I may, through the chair, it doesn't relate to this conversation. It relates to something else that was said, so I want to just make sure there was nothing else with this conversation right now. Okay. Okay. So the question that I just had was the department heads are being asked to try to track cash. So the question will be, will there be outreach from like the auditor controller's office to the department heads and training on how to view their cash? I'm not sure that in the past they have had that full review.
Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector, Shamise Kevison. So we will be reaching out to some of those departments, but and I fully acknowledge that Ms. Pierce and I have not formalized the conversation, but I anticipate that this will be a conversation taking place also at department head meetings on a regular basis. Unfortunately, as the county does experience more challenges with cash and additional resources, as well as uncertainty with federal programs, I think those conversations, unfortunately, are going to have to be taking place much more frequently. We, in my office, have had some discussions with some of the larger department heads. The tricky part is understanding that those departments who are in the general fund and not typically used to understanding that their cash flow impacts all the other departments in the general fund is a larger discussion to have, because they won't individually have the ability to track their cash. They're going to have to actually be paying attention to their revenues and expenses on a more regular basis. And they're going to need to be made aware, which I've done at some department head meetings. I've also mentioned it a couple times at these board meetings, that the department heads needs to be making sure that they are submitting their claims to the state and getting those reimbursements in. But we will continue to have that as part of our ongoing dialogue. And those departments who do need more assistance with understanding their cash balances, we will have those conversations, but the general fund budget units won't be able to see the cash balance because it's the whole general fund. So they will have to be more aware of their revenue and expenses and the timing of those. But I have had conversations with Janine Miller and her staff as well for her departments under her authority. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to assure Supervisor Mulhern that I will certainly do my best to let you know if there's other concerns that come up. And as I mentioned, we will be having those conversations with department heads. I think that's probably not been something made very clear to them, and I'm hoping with language in this resolution that I will have additional ability to point to the resolution as we work with also those special districts and other entities that have funds in the county treasury, that they need to make sure that they're paying attention to that as well, because I don't really want to have to come forward or to do one of those 85% loans, but the ones we've done in the past have been directly tied to property tax distribution flow. And so mainly that's what we would be looking at. I'm hoping that that would be limited more to those perhaps special districts who may be having challenges based on the way the property tax comes in and is distributed. That's the only ones we've done in the past, have been directly tied to 85% of the property tax revenue. And we have deducted those payments to repay those loans directly from their property tax distribution.
So what I'm hearing is that at this point, that there are no specific other departments that you have real concerns about, or other districts, or are there?
We do have a couple of fire districts that as I mentioned, are experiencing challenges as we get those fire agency allocations and contracts through the process. I don't know for certain. It's my understanding when that process was put in place, there may have been different people who represented the districts in those discussions, and I'm not sure exactly how we got to the process in the past. That did take place shortly after I was out, and so it has been my encouragement that we develop some better process. I don't think, as I mentioned, if there's 22 fire agencies receiving funds 4 times a year, that's 88 contracts every single year. I just don't see how that is a good use of time on anybody's part. So I'm hopeful somehow we can come to a better process in place that will then allow us to distribute those funds more timely to those districts, because I do think they are experiencing some issues. So I'm not going to pick on a particular district, but I do know there are a couple of them that are struggling with that. And I would say, frankly, that my concern with departments is an ongoing concern. And I do think that all departments and all department heads and their fiscal staff need to be more aware, because what it does impact, even those departments in the general fund, is the general fund depends on interest revenue from the Treasury pool as part of the general fund budget. So we need to be making sure that we are maximizing our average daily balance of cash, so that when I go to allocate the interest allocation in the pool, that we are able to maximize the amount of interest, because that is part of what you're using to balance the budget. So everybody has a piece in it.
Yeah. So thank you for that clarification. And also with this transfer of money from the pool to the Department of Transportation, then, and my understanding is that the interest rate is about 4% right now.
That's correct.
So they will be, from the RMRA, that will be that interest that accrues from that $5 million, $6 million will come from future RMRA funds.
I don't know that they'll be able to allocate that against their RMRA. It will impact the operating budget for the department for their interest revenue. I do know that when we use, if he had a balance carry forward of RMRA, we would have to continue to allocate that interest to those funds. I don't know, they would have to look at the program. I don't know that the opposite can take place.
Oh.
So I believe that it will hit their revenue that they have built their operating budget on in terms of interest allocation, because we do not have a revolving line of credit, and that program is money that's allocated every month. It's not a formal budget allocation approval process like a Caltrans project is.
Okay, great. Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, so I'm going to support this, I imagine, with my colleagues, because we have an immediate need. But I'm not convinced the language is as tight as it should be, and we're cleaning up a lot of messes from the past. I want to make sure we're not creating a new mess for a future board, future time, unanticipated consequence of our language. I see some counties like Contra Costa are more verbose about the steps that have to be taken, including certifying. Again, this isn't for the intra-county transfers, but for the districts and cities. I think it may be pertinent, especially since we're talking about potential annexations. There may be an unanticipated consequence we can't see today. I would rather essentially plagiarize language from another county that has already tested it over the decades than invent something on our own. So I'm going to support it today, but I think there may be some room for further cleanup.
So the language, Supervisor Williams, the language suggested by County Council, does that move us in the direction you're thinking?
Yeah, I think it moves us closer. I remain concerned that we don't have a way to certify what the total is. Therefore, we can't calculate what 85% would be. I don't know of any districts or cities that are going to ask for that type of transfer. But if they did, we've just set policy that allows it. And we haven't been clear about how we would calculate it, who would calculate it, how that would get certified. I think that's something that should come back for cleanup.
So you're looking for language like the auditor controller would determine that the 85% threshold has not been met.
Yeah, the language as I read it from Contra Costa, they have a similar resolution for transfers, and it's both under 252 and the Constitution. They cover both. They have, as a step, the auditor controller issuing a certificate determining how much is transferable under the law. I think that may be useful for us. If somebody were to ask today, after we pass this, I don't know that we have envisioned how that calculation would work.
So I'm going to turn to the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector. Is that something that could be developed?
Auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, Shamice Cubis, and certainly we can develop more processes, procedures, and requirements as the board would like. I would just say that council and I have looked at several counties that have this type of resolution. Contra Costa is one, so is Riverside, so is Los Angeles, so is Modoc. Those are the ones that we specifically looked at. So we did try to incorporate some of this. I'm definitely open to developing additional, procedures internally. What we have the situation today is that we are in the urgent and immediate situation where we are not able to pay vendors, and these are major construction projects. So, I'm certainly willing to look at that with council, and if the board would like some additional, information brought forward, or we can put some additional processes in place. But as I mentioned, I'm really hoping that's going to be limited. And I will probably have discussions with council about whether or not I will actually be willing to do those without bringing them forward to the board on an individual basis when we actually do those 85% of revenue transfers. I'm not presently anticipating doing that with any of the particular districts at this time or any of the non-county entities, but that language is what the other counties do include in their temporary transfers of money resolution.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly we have the issue at hand today, but we're looking at the future too. So, how do we make sure that we're not overextending, ourselves? Okay. Any further comment from the board? Okay, seeing none. Any public comment in the chambers?
Seeing none in Seaside.
Good morning. Dee Pallison from District 5. I just have one question. When Supervisor Norvell asked Ms. Cuppison when she became aware of this, she said that about 2 months ago she had conversations with fiscal staff that when she saw that the cash, there might be a problem with the cash flow, and that the department's response was that they got caught up or with their Caltrans claims. So that's just concerning to me. So that I just would like some clarification. Were they behind in their Caltrans claims filing? So is that why this was created? And if that really is the case, or is it just semantics and language? If it really is the case, have they changed their policies and procedures to make sure that they don't create this situation again? If we find ourselves here again, I apologize for I'm trying to think this through as I'm saying it. So my question is, were they behind in their Caltrans claiming? Were they not submitting them timely? And have they changed their policies and procedures to make sure that they stay, that they file their claims timely? I would just like to know that. Thank you.
Okay, we will seek clarification. Let's see. Okay, do you want to respond to that?
So again, Howard DeShield, Director of Transportation. A lot of times during the winter when we're just paying consultants, the invoices are small and staff will let a few months go before they put in a claim. Again, the construction hit hard and heavy with big bills all at once. You can spend a lot of money fast. So we are trying to turn those claims around, but there's always a lag. You pay your bill and then, but yes, that is true that we could do the smaller ones sooner, but they've usually been small enough that sometimes, we've let that go. So we are trying to, immediately bill every month. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Certainly.
Deputy Director Alicia Winokur. So I just also want to clarify this on the reimbursement schedule, that it's all on a reimbursement basis, right? So the consultants have to have paid their consultants, then they invoice us, then we have to pay them, then we have to have actually, you know, submitted the invoice to the auditor, paid them, the check has to go out, then we can develop the reimbursement request to Caltrans. So that's the lag that Director DeShiel has been talking about. And so there is a lag, but we are keeping up on it, but it does, we have to wait. It's all a reimbursement process. So the money's got to go out before we can even invoice for it to come back in.
Okay, thank you. Any further comment from the chambers? Seeing none. Seaside Room?
None.
And online?
Seeing none.
Okay, back to the board. Looking for a motion.
I would move the recommended action, amended to have County Council, Executive Office, Auditor, Controller further review for refinements and bring back if necessary.
I'll second.
Does that include the language that County Council already offered?
Yeah, my motion includes the language County Council offered today. Do we need to publish that before the vote?
County Council Charlotte Scott, I do not believe you need to publish it. We've quoted the language, but we will have, if the motion is to include the revisions that were stated in open session and reflected in the final signed resolution, I think that's sufficient.
Okay, could you state those revisions again, please?
Absolutely. The very last sentence of the resolution that is published with the item starts with, all such transfers shall be done, and here's the quote addition, not prior to July 1st, 2025, nor after the last Monday in April of 2026, comma, and shall be done, and then the remaining language, in such a way and as at such a time as they will not negatively affect the funds from which they are drawn, comma, and shall be reimbursed to the funds from which they are drawn in sufficient time such that they have no negative effect on the ability to conduct lawfully budgeted transactions, period.
Okay. And that's the motion, which was seconded. Correct?
Correct.
All right. Okay, we'll vote by the button. Oh, pardon? Oh, we have to do roll call because Supervisor Williams is in the Seaside Room in Fort Bragg. Ready.
Supervisor Norvell?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
Supervisor Klein?
Aye.
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Supervisor Hashak?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, very good. So at 10:11, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.